Welcome. Welcome to the GenAI or the AI panel. We're excited about this topic, as you know. Have you heard of AI? And how many of you have implemented AI programs at your business? Great. Most everyone. Last year, MIT did a survey of many organizations, and being MIT, it's probably statistically significant to some extent. And they found 95% of those enterprises deploying AI had no positive ROI. Now, those of you who have the program, how many of you have a positive ROI? Only a couple as well. So I've tried to validate that with a couple of consultants, and it is very, very close. The use of AI is very high, but the ROI, the positive return, is rather low. This year, McKinsey published a number of about 80% of those who deployed AI in their surveys were unable to determine the ROI, negative or positive as well. Why do you think that is? So we can talk a little bit about that, perhaps. But before we do, I think you'd agree it'd be a privilege to have industry experts address us today, and maybe someday we will. But today we have. Just want to see if they're listening. Yeah. Instead, you got us. Go ahead. You go first, Brian.
You got it. So good afternoon. My name's Brian Rudy. I'm with Verizon. I have been with, let's see, I started with as a public sector customer, let's say in the early 90s. And as of about 7 hours ago, I've been with Verizon or legacy companies for 31 years. I have spent my time in everything from car kits and bag phones to things such as network and process optimization, setting up global network management organizations in different places around the world as well. But most recently been involved in making sure that we take anything wireless that's not a tablet or a handset and making it really possible to solve problems for our customers. And so that's the IoT and fixed wireless access space, what we refer to as our cellular connectivity practice within Verizon. My job as an orchestrator is to make sure that the broader Verizon is doing what we need to satisfy our customers' needs. So really excited to be here today, and look forward to talking with you more about what we're doing specifically in our space. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rao Kakarluri. I'm one of the co-founders of a startup based in San Jose. It's called Agentic. And then what we build is a complete end-to-end agentic AI platform with mainly dealing with real-time data, where we are also building the real-time agents, which solves the real problems. And my background has been all through is in the last 30 years is on data. So started my career in IBM, went and to Tandem, where we build non-stop SQL transactions. Then we are the first one to take transactions to big data, and then started my own journey as a company. And this is my second company where we are building a platform so that people like the users can build solutions on top of it. Thanks, Tom.
Guy Merritt. Can you guys hear me? Does this work?
Yeah.
I'm with KMS Technology. I'm our Chief Technology Officer. I've been doing this for a fairly long time now, but I started my career off. I used to work for the President and Joint Chiefs of Staff doing command and control on airborne platforms. Because of that work, went into telecom, spent most of my career doing telecom. I'm proud to say Verizon has been my longest customer for most of my career. Had the opportunity to work on the transport, a local access side, Verizon Fios, and then also I led wireless test and measurement, a company called Spirent. So I'm intimately familiar with all the safer network testing and all the rules, because I had to build all the test packs and all the systems, supply all the labs to do that. And then most recently, prior to this one, I was one of the chief technology officers at Deloitte, where I ran the largest cloud practice at the firm at that time. And now here at KMS Technology, we're an engineering services firm. You ask us and we'll build it.
Well, I'm extremely privileged to be part of this esteemed panel, and I've never been anywhere near the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But my name is Pete St. Pierre, and I'm a Director of Product Management responsible for our Internet of Things platform in Oracle Cloud. I've got about 20 years of engineering experience, dating back to my time with Sun Microsystems, where I did protocol stacks for small devices. I spent some time with Cisco for about 4 years, delivering solutions and embedded routers and in the edge. And then over my remaining tenure with Oracle, delivered 3 different versions of cloud services for Internet of Things technologies. And most recently, where my team just delivered our first OCI native cloud service.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, team. Let's get started. Brian, you work for a company that delivers services and technology to thousands of clients. And how do you see embedded AI at the edge unlocking new value and new economic benefit?
Well, sure. So, some folks have heard me say that I'll say IoT already is everywhere AI is going, and that's by no coincidence, right? IoT is both the source for data that AI requires, as well as the means by which to act on it. We've been talking about that all day today. The question is, how do we then take that and make sure that whether it is at the edge, near edge, or the computing is in the cloud, how do we make sure that those two pieces are talking well together? First step is we make sure there's a good network there to make that connection. Then make sure that that network is also fluent enough in all of the understanding of the ecosystem to be able to evolve as it needs to. So what that means for us is embedding AI in the very fabric of what we do in our network. So what would have otherwise in the past have taken a truck roll or hands-on hardware to make a change, maybe it's to spectrum allocation or otherwise in the platform itself, we can actually do that not just with a software-defined network, but actually layering in Agentic AI so that the platform the network as a platform understands what's going on, can see traffic patterns, make changes, and implement that in real time for us. So really does make quite a difference for us. And you take that to the next step. You've got a situation where we have sensors out there that, sure, there's payload of information coming from those sensors, but there's also the information you get from the behavior of the sensor itself. And applying AI practices and through our ThinkSpace platform and our ThinkSpace Intelligence AI platform extensions, you can actually understand what's going on with the sensor itself. And one of our customers very recently identified a situation where they rolled out some software within their ecosystem that unbeknownst to them was causing problems with their sensors. And because we have that access, they were able to discern that very quickly. So, then you take that to the next step and how you act on that. That's where Agentic AI comes in. And we're excited about the next step.
Indeed, the outcome and the action is what the customer is looking for. And starting there, Guy, a little similar question, but with respect to the fact that for decades, data platforms have been deployed. There's many of them that cannot be ripped and replaced. But what is your perspective on how now, in particular, AI in general can add value to those existing, and what augmentations are needed to get more value out of them?
Yeah, and that's a tough position to be in. And you're spot on. We have done this huge effort. It started a decade ago, really when we started the big cloud migrations, and we really revamped our data infrastructures. All different types of new data architectures emerged, and then now we're faced with another dilemma again. If you ask most people today, they say, "Oh, how do you get your systems ready for AI?" Well, it still comes back to the data. It still starts there. Problem is, the standard answer is to rip and replace again. But that's the challenge we're faced with. So if you want to have a data platform that's fully integrated with the latest technologies, you're in a tough spot with that. So then you start looking at, all right, if I can't rip and replace, you're caught between a rock and a hard place here, because what you need to make the data, even if it's generative AI, you still are going to have to add some new infrastructure. You just cannot get away with that. So if you just take something, you want to leverage your data sets, you don't want to do the rip and replace, so then you have to augment. What do I start augmenting with? Well, you got to make some big decisions. Am I going to do things like, am I going to implement a RAG implementation, which implies now I got to build a vectorized database? And the challenge you get with a vectorized database works great, very fast, But in reality, if you think about it, you're kind of duplicating your data that's in your data lake. So there are some inefficiencies you gain, or you can look at it, some of the things that I was showing in my earlier talk today, where you use an agentic AI approach with a set of tools, and then you try to take a little bit different approach with the data sets. But really, either path that you go down, even if you were using something like a Databricks or a Snowflake or a modern data platform that already had generative AI RAG integrated into it, it's still, even with that technology, it is no better than the data itself. So the data's got to be, I'm going to use this word, truthful, but maybe curated is the better word. So still got to have that curated data set where all the rules about governance and managing that, to get that to work, you still have to do the basics. And way too many times I've been with clients, they jump right into the deep end about AI, and Dr. Tom talked about why are so many failing. I see it firsthand. I get the phone call to come in, hey, I'm not getting ROI. I'm like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, we're just pointing to these data sets over here. God, these data sets are not curated, not checked, not controlled. They're literally spreadsheets on somebody's desktop, and you're ingesting that data, and you're building AI systems on a weak foundation. So really, it kind of does go back to boring stuff, the basic stuff, governance, data curation, get the data foundation, even in your legacy data platform.
And I have to underscore that quality is another term for curated, or at least related term of that. And we're spending time on the quality of the data. You heard BJ earlier say it took over a year in one of his efforts to get the quality.
I resonated when he said that. I said, I know his pain. I know exactly what he's feeling. Yes.
It's a big deal. It's accessibility is part of it, and also is it analytics ready, to do the next phase as well. So thank you, Peter.
Dr. Tom. Can I just
hearing voices again?
Can I bypass the question and just jump right into what Guy was saying?
Oh, I'm the moderator.
Okay.
You can, of course you can. Sure.
What you're saying, Guy, totally resonated, because the joy that I just had was taking a team through 2 years of development to reimagine all of the work that's been done in IoT with Oracle and build an OCI native IoT service. And what that means, and it hits so many of the points that you were talking about. First of all, you can't do any kind of computer analytics unless you bring the data to the logic or the logic to the data. So the first thing we did was we built the IoT service around the Oracle AI Autonomous Database. So we ingest the data, we do some normalization internally to the service so you don't have to call out to other functions, and then we land it in a normalized model in the database. So immediately you have access to all of the agentic tools that are built into Autonomous Database, and it eliminates exactly what you were saying. Now, there's the work to bring in the other curated data, which again, because we're an OCI native service, you have the whole OCI ecosystem of Oracle Analytics Cloud, Oracle Data Platform, Oracle Integration Cloud, basically bringing together all of these pieces so that your MCP server and tools can act on device data in concert with all of the ERP data, which may not be as clean, but at least the new data that you're bringing into the system is curated.
And not to go so far down the rabbit hole, but what Peter just outlined, there is not a C-suite in the world who wants to hear that story.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear that. They want to, why can't I have AI working? Because what he just outlined, Peter, that was the hard work, but once it's done, then you get it. But nobody wants to hear that 18 months to get my data ready story.
Yeah, of course.
Well, and that's the other data though. The nice thing is the going forward, all of the new real-time data, it's the legacy ERP data that has to be cleaned.
Good point, Peter. Let's stay with you. Switch to the topic of the infamous digital twin. And that's a confluence of technologies already, as you well know.
It is.
With augmented reality combined with expert systems, combined with high performance graphics, as well, lots of visualization. But here comes AI. And what's your point of view on how AI will help with the simulation and the troubleshooting and the operational mission of a digital twin?
Thanks. Great question, Tom. So again,
What
part
do
of
you
it
thought of it?
part of it comes back to the cleaning of data, right? Because as application developers, you don't want to think about 100 different device models. You want to think about, the canonical representation of an HVAC unit, as an example. So by building digital twins, you can bring the data in, do a little bit of cleaning on the ingestion process, and land the data where you can work on it. The digital twins let you do the modeling, but once the data is in there, you can start to use agentic tools to actually query the data to find out about relationships you may not have been aware of as you were building the twins. So it becomes that iterative model, some of it through agentic practices and other just informing humans to go back and update models. And what we've done with the tools that we provide in our MCP server, we can do the obvious things, which is, ask about what's the health of my HVAC. But the solution really starts with the developer. And how many times have you developed an IoT solution and you're doing your POC and then you stop seeing data? So now I'm going to go check credentials. I'm going to check my connectivity. What if you could just say to your IoT database, why am I not seeing data from device 12? And it can go through and, I see data in the rejected table now, and I see that the adapter you created for that model changed on this date. You may want to go check with this. So the agentic tools give you not just the ability to have better business outcomes, but also improve the developer experience along the way. And again, having that built on digital twins gives you that base set of relationships, which the AI can then build off of.
It's a fascinating and frustrating problem related to this point, Rao.
Yeah.
And you do this a lot. You build with your customers solutions in labs, and you go into production, and there are lots of issues that hold it up from the production. So by definition, then the lab environment is not really replicating the production environment like it perhaps should, because you're discovering issues as you move into production.
Right.
And it's very hard to make that connection identical, as you know. But what are some things we could do, and what do you see as the gaps between that lab and that production environment that can be addressed back in the R&D and lab stage?
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, if you really look at it, right, we can divide, especially now as we are seeing, right, a lot of not only data ingestion, model creation, now the workflows, now the agents, all those things, right? So if you want to, in the labs, they all work fine, right? Because you take a small data set, you're creating in a model, and then you are saying that, hey, that's good enough to take to production. That's not the thing, because when you show it to the operations folks, they're going to say no, right? Because they are going to say, hey, it's not a static data source. Now it's a dynamic data source. Data is being generated in real time. You need to ingest the data, or the data may be coming in incrementally. What are your guardrails, right? And then the data maybe as Gabe was saying, like, okay, if the data is, let's say, one of the sensors failed, how do I handle that data? And then not only in the data ingestion, how you are transforming the data, and also how the models are going to handle that data, right? Because you don't want models to generate your predictions, which is outcome where your endpoint agents are depending on, right? If you like, the problem is it's not about training a model and deploying the model, especially when you take it into production, when you're doing the serving time, you need to deal that when the data is also coming, right? So when you're building the systems, you need to wear that hat saying that, how is my operational environment? How do I take it? How do I secure it, right? And that's where I think we see a lot of gaps, and then slowly people are looking at thinking about it, and that becomes critical part of your solution. Yeah.
Thank you. As we look at the flow, one way to look at it is the 3 A's: acquire data, analyze the data, and then act on the data. And then, of course, feedback. That's one model that I've used, a lot. When we talk about the first part, Brian, of the acquisition, one mechanism for acquisition, especially out in the IoT physical world, is a sensor.
For sure.
What are you seeing in the domain of innovation with sensors today?
Well, I was hoping you'd ask. I happen to bring one with me. So well, we'll start with this one. So this is actually we refer to affectionately in Verizon as a light sense node. You might recognize it as something that looks like it would be on top of a street light somewhere, because indeed that's what it is. But it's more than just an ambient light sensor. It does a lot of things for us, right? Not only does it know where it is spatially, and of course it also understands the light situation, but also has other sensors in it as well, and also our ability to control it remotely. So it's unlocked a lot of use cases for our customers, and we've been deploying, I'll say, millions of these around the country. And what's been happening is these investor-owned utilities and municipalities and otherwise see this as an opportunity for them to implement new ways to save money, because they can, for example, maybe in the middle of the night turn their street lights down to 40 or 50% and only turn them up when there's an emergency in a particular sector or on a particular route. That's one motion. They also understand when there may be an issue with a light, and that's when you start getting to the agenticness of it, where we've got one utility that when it senses a problem with the light, maybe the luminaire itself isn't working properly, maybe it's flickering, maybe there has been an impact to the pole. It's not just sending an alert to somebody, it's opening up a ticket, it's dispatching a tech, and the tech's going out there and taking care of it. And so that kind of thing is really where we're seeing some of that all come full circle, if you will. A couple others we've seen recently have been pretty exciting. One, we've got Loci, a customer of ours. You may know them as they're capturing methane from landfills. And one of the things they recognized was to do that effectively. And oh, by the way, you have to do that because it is in many jurisdictions it's required by law to capture it. But they also found that they could sell it if they captured it efficiently. So what they found was that they could put these wells out there, but they would have to walk across all of these wells over and over again to make sure they were working properly. Put a couple of sensors out there, and now all of a sudden they're monitoring in near real time and continuously, back to the conversation this morning, about how those wells are performing and how they're getting that data. So that's one. And then the last one, you kind of picture this floor here being poured in preparation for finished flooring. A company called FloorCloud. You know, they recognize that, well, there's a problem not just with is the floor cured enough to put the flooring down, but did it cure properly all along the way? That's continuous measurement and consistently. So imagine trying to put a floor down, a laminate flooring on top of a cement floor such as this in a surgical suite. Then that floor didn't properly cure. The glue's not going to properly adhere, and you're going to end up having to scrape that up, and not just the labor, but also the physical waste of the product. So they found a way to do that and alert themselves of that in continuous form. So those are the kinds of things we're seeing, and then we get into the fun stuff like cattle monitoring and all those fun things. But we'll leave that for another discussion. Thank you.
Very novel. Doesn't it double as an oil filter?
Oh yeah, you've got to put it in this way. Exactly. Yeah.
What will they think of that? Guy, you have been at the emergence of agentic AI, and you've seen its proliferation taking place. So I think you have enough statistically significant data to tell us what are the applications that are right on and that are really giving a positive ROI versus the one that have been oversold. And can you give us some warnings on the oversold part?
Yeah. So when we think, let's take the first part of that. Where are we finding success? Where are we seeing it? And I'm very, very pro agentic. Okay. So don't take my words as I'm being negative. It's just the reality of the world we're living in today. So where it flourishes best, and I love what Raul said when you were walking through that model, because at the heart of that is that workflow. And so if I think about an enterprise, where we see a lot of really good success is where we have a well-defined workflow that somebody was willing to re-engineer to make it, to have it work in conjunction with an agentic approach. We see it break down. I'm going to flip between oversold and where it's working well, but it breaks down when people use the same old workflow and they just try to do an overlay. That almost never works. And what happens, they blame the agentic AI, and it's like, oh, it was poor engineering. You didn't engineer within the parameters to have this work. So where it works well is when you have a well-defined workflow to work in an agentic fashion. It also works very well when it's a well-documented complex workflow. It works really, really good especially when the data sets you're dealing with in that particular workflow may be overwhelming. That a human just cannot stay up with it to analyze this data set, this amount of data, this amount of time to take the action. The agentic approach absolutely can excel in that area. However, to have it excel, you also have to be willing or be in a situation to allow it to fail. If you remember from my talk I was given earlier, we're dealing with a world that gives us a probabilistic outcome now. It's not necessarily discrete anymore. It's programmatic. It's probabilistic. So as long as you can tolerate that, you're okay. So the oversold comes in more when something is mission critical, particularly in regulated environments. So when you have to prove and showcase why everything happened, you can get into problems because the way I've seen some engineered systems out there, they didn't take into account how to keep the appropriate logs of this because, and you can't say, well, it did it this way because the model decided. There's no regulator giving you a pass on that. So you have to understand why don't put it in right now. Don't put it in a system that's regulated unless you can prove why it did what with it. So right now we advocate agent assistance. Tomorrow it's going to be agent autonomy, but it's agent assistance right now.
Let me pick up on your point about AI-enabled workflow re-engineering, the whole workflow. I think it was part of your point there. And the idea of the efficiencies associated with that. And then we asked the question, or at least I did, why are the AI projects not returning an ROI at a higher rate? In fact, it's dismal, compared to others. And I was speaking with my son yesterday, and he's using Claude code, and he's a product designer using Claude code. And he said he can speed up his part of the workflow, but he still has to wait the same amount of time for the next step. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I'll add a real story with this. This is outside of IoT, but in our agentic approach to software engineering now, we have seen originally 2 years ago, we were getting a 10x increase in code generation. Unbelievable.
Right. But that's a part of the
But the outcome, we didn't get the project done any faster. Why? Well, 2 years ago, we realized we did not re-engineer the test process agentically.
Right. That's the end-to-end workflow miss.
It wasn't the end-to-end.
Metaphor. Let's say you're going to fly out of SFO at 6 p.m. and you have a process to get there. Packing, maybe you call an Uber. What if you improve that process so much that you got to the airport 2 hours early? Does that really help your outcome? No, because the plane still takes off at 6. So you have to re-engineer the entire process, if you will. The metaphor falls apart because you can't do that with an airline. But the point you get, it doesn't matter that in this case with my son, he's now waiting. Now he can do other work. But again, that's another effort to get the ROI. I'm going to have to make up these questions now. I just dropped. Okay.
We don't want that to happen.
By the way,
you worked hard on this.
I print this out and fold it and I can memorize it. It's a lot of work here. All right.
Tom, that is such a big deal. Not getting the outcome or defining it up front. You have to look at it end to end. Otherwise, you're doing a local optimization. It does not fix the system.
That's right.
Yeah. And it drives me nuts when I'm with a client and I'm like, we have a methodology to say, no, baseline the current one, understand the bottlenecks, re-engineer, try it, experiment, rinse and repeat because you didn't get it right the first time.
Okay, so take that away from this panel. Is look at the end to end as much as you can, and that's really hard because you don't own the end to end as a somebody does, but it's at such high level they're abstracted from the. Remember that was called business process reengineering. Do you remember those days? Yeah.
We absolutely have resurrected that.
Yeah,
so Dr. Tom, it is absolutely
for AI enablement.
100%.
I was over here thinking rolled throughput yield. I mean, that's exactly right. Right.
Yep.
All right, let's get to Peter here. Peter, we're talking about a GenAI is connected now to live operational systems, data flows, perhaps acquisition and also inferencing taking place. And how do you think about trust and security, which would be a subset of governance?
Right. Well, again, when you talk about it, you have to think, and in the context of the panel we did earlier today about the edge, and thinking about the whole workflow, you have to look at, from the security perspective and from policy perspective, where you're going to protect the data and where you bring the data and the logic together. So there are parts of that where it makes sense. You don't want the data to leave the premise. So you push the logic down, you run it at the edge. The whole NEC architecture becomes a lot more important. But at the end of the day, for me to take full advantage of GenAI, you really need to bring that together, the real-time data together with the rest of the business, your supply chain data, your HCM data, ERP, everything. You're really only going to do that in the cloud. And that's, I think, where it's critical, when you work with the hyperscalers like Oracle, to be able to do it in an environment where the tools are truly integrated. One of the biggest problems with security is when you try to manage policy in too many different places. You have too many different organizations that think they have control. Being able to work in a single cloud environment where you can have a uniform set of policies, you can have network level access to control, you can have device level policies. I mean, really that, I think, becomes, where things are successful, and it allows you to deploy these end-to-end workflows that don't suffer from security issues when you're handling critical data like health information. In the whole, pretty much any industry today, there's a certain level of sensitive information that you just can't afford to leak. And we saw from earlier talks about, threat exploitation. It can happen in so many places. So it's really about having an architecture that gives you uniform controls over the policy and the security of the data.
Take that from this panel as well as the others. The security dimension is increasing the number of threat actor attacks. My company is a medium-sized company, and we're looking at literally millions of alerts a year, millions. And you have to sort them out for false positives, et cetera. But I just want to underscore the security dimension to protect us. But Rao, I'm going to ask you to explain the terms here a little bit. But when a LLM-driven model is engaged to a physical infrastructure, right, and that could be a thing in the IoT, right? Right. Well, that's the domain here we're talking about. But there's a probabilistic dimension and a deterministic dimension. Right. And that's a conflict there. Explain the terms and how you resolve that conflict.
Yeah. So thanks, Tom. Right. Typically, right, when especially when you're building your solution, as Pete said, right, you're leveraging LLM. So, and it is probabilistic, right? For example, it is good at reasoning and it is good at recommendations, right? But you cannot take that and then make actions out of it, right? Because you have guardrails, and then especially all the customers. I'll tell you an example. One of our customers, they told us, hey, you need to do SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. And then it's impossible on a non-deterministic way, right? Because if you're doing a conversational AI, and then when you're asking question, and then it's not repeatable, right? It may come back with a reply, and that's not what you will be able to do. So that's why when you take that and you want to operationalize it, you need to go back to your rules. These are the fixed rules where you apply so that the decisions are deterministic. That means it is repeatable. And that's how we are going to, yes, they think about LLM as an advisor, but when you are taking actions, you need to apply your rules, deterministic rules. So, yeah.
Brian, let's go to, I think we can get through these questions in the time we have here. If you could keep the answer brief. Tell us a little bit about how you see AI playing in the IoT space. I know that's a very general question.
Well, I think I hit a little bit on that earlier, but I think really what comes down to is coming to the point where the people who are using AI and people who are using IoT recognize that, well, there are more things that I can do here, and kind of getting folks
opening up the imagination
for sure. And I think what's happened is that we've got folks that maybe have become a little jaded over time. We kind of have to wake them up again and say, hey, you know what? Truly, let's talk about your business a little bit. And it's really given an opportunity for us as doing our broader work in connectivity, and when our sales reps, regarding wherever they may be in the business, can have a conversation with a customer and say, True, talk to me about your business. Talk to me about your day. Talk to me about what keeps you up at night. And that actually, we get to a new paradigm now that we're talking about things that actually are unlocking. We talked a little bit earlier about you may be able to collect the data. We've been able to collect data for years, right? Well, what can you do with that data now, right? Whether you would otherwise be swimming in petabytes of data. Well, now we can actually process that, and we can understand what's going on, and we can start answering questions and be a little more predictive in the environment, and things that our customers would have otherwise not been able to do. Whether it's security related, right? Looking at you're making reference to the hits you've been getting. How do you make sense of all that data? And I think where people in the past have been kind of resigned to, well, you know what? We know the data is out there. I just don't have the people to figure it out. Well, now as the force multiplier that AI is, we were talking about earlier today, that's where I think it's unlocked. And whether it's IoT collecting the data or being that action, that actuator coming out of the logic, either way, I think it's unlocking. I think you used the word great, which was imagination, unlocking that in ways that we haven't seen in quite some time.
That's a great statement about customer intimacy. When there's a new technology, it used to be big data, IoT, cloud. Here we are with AI. It can just open up conversations. So
for sure,
as a go-to-market strategy as well, especially if you have something new. A few customers will turn down the opportunity to talk about something new, even if they're not going to buy it. But it opens the door.
It opens the door. That's exactly right.
A reason to call, as they say in sales, right? Okay, Edge AI and generative AI, there's some overlap in that Venn diagram. Grew up as pretty different worlds, guy. As you said, tell me the confluence and how you think they're coming together in the modern world here.
Yeah, it's I don't really see it necessarily as a merger, but I see it as a division of labor. And there's you kind of think of a protocol stack, and there's things on the edge. And by the way, when we say edge AI, it's just not generative AI or agentic. It's think about traditional AI as machine learning, and right at the edge, right close to the we always like to say if you're going to do these really quick inferencing systems on the edge, you want to be as close to that source data as possible. So in the ideal world, if speed matters, there's a sensor, here's your edge computer, and it's right there. You want to be able to do that, and that's a place where it excels. Now, if I step above that, and if I think about this division of labor, and I put generative AI on top of it, now generative AI is more about, and I love what you said, I think you said it's your advisor, right? Yeah. It's going to be reading that data, it'll be reasoning. It's amazing. It'll come up with a really good plan, but it in itself won't take action. That's when the agentic piece comes into play. So if you look at it, where they come together is, hey, my edge AI can tell me something's wrong or right really fast. My Gen AI sitting on top of that can say, I understand what's happening, and I can tell you what to do about it, if anything, around it.
Good way to look at it. Yeah. Good bifurcation. Thanks. Speaking of a bifurcation, the edge salesperson will say, oh, that workload belongs at the edge. The cloud salesperson will say, oh, and by the edge person, if informed, might say for 7 reasons. The cloud salesperson will say, oh, no, that belongs in the cloud. Now, there could be some overlap there, but Peter, you're going to tell us what belongs where.
Well, I think Guy nailed it. There are certain decisions that need to be made at the edge. And the only way you can do that, especially if latency is an issue, is to have that compute running close to the data. And again, it really is all about the compute always has to be close to the data. So you make those initial determinations. It also has limited visibility because an edge tends to have whatever it's connected to. The bigger decision might be made across multiple edges. And the cloud is where that's going to come together. So being able to land all of that into a single database or a single data lake made up of multiple databases that are all tied together, that's where your Gen AI is really going to thrive because it's meant to process large amounts of data. It can still apply to some of the small edge situations. And again, tying back to the security aspects, the less data you have to move around, the more secure things are going to be. And once you've pushed it up into the cloud, that's when you can bring it in with the rest of your enterprise data, which is going to provide a lot of the learning for the learning models and the context
And the statistical significance.
for the real time. So I think to me, that's where the decision is. If it's latency and immediate action, put it at the edge. The long-term strategy and the quarterback is up in the cloud.
And that can be sorted out. I didn't mean to imply it was so confusing, but you do have to put sales initiative and agendas aside, and it can be pretty straightforward with some set of guidelines.
Yeah.
The companies that can do that objectively for their clients will win because the clients will see through that. All right, we have one last question, and it's going to Raul. Government and regulatory bodies such as the EU AI, guidelines, the NIST AI guidelines, they're all playing a role, obviously, in AI, and a lot of them are related to security, in my world as well. But comment on that and the role you're seeing and what solutions and therefore companies have to do to effectively comply. Just make some comments on that and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So if you really look at it, right, whatever platform you're choosing, or the way we are building, it's always I think there are 4 different things we need to look at, right? The first thing is auditability and explainability. That means whatever you're building, the solutions, the platform should be able to support. So most of the tools you think they're leaving up the solution to build that, but that's no. It has to come part of your platform. The next is data versus AI service separation. That means data has to stay where it has to. So you cannot say, hey, my data is sitting in the US and then I should be able to access from Europe. That's no. So how do you secure that, right? And the third piece is the governance. So who is accessing, how you are controlling, and all that is going to happen. And finally, there should be a human who has to really monitor it and then make decisions on that. I think these 4 things
on the loop.
On the loop, human on the loop, absolutely has to be involved to make that happen. So yeah,
that's a good way to end. I think we're all advocating humans in and on and around the loop. At this time in our age and generation. I see the blinking double zeros, which means we're finished, and I will turn it over to Michael, our master of ceremonies.
Thank you very much.